We will call your boss. We will call your parole officer. We will call we will call everyone to verify that you are an associate producer. Hey, welcome to The Create Unknown. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, and The Create Unknown is dead. Long live The Create Unknown. Thanks for putting up with the clickbait there. But we have some changes that have been ruminating for a couple of months now that we haven't been ready until today to really kind of discuss in detail.
Yeah, some big changes. Big changes about how we do things. We're finally getting around to debuting some of the merchandise that we've been thinking about talking about for a while. We're ready to do that, so we'll talk about that later on. We'll talk about some of the changes in the community too. But we want to start off by thanking the people who got us to this point. And we're really happy with how everything has played out. We're approaching, 2 million views and downloads combined on all platforms. It's really kind of amazing, when we think about how we've put this together. That we're not coming from some crazy studio with investment on that sort of thing. We just have a community of people that has listened and valued talking about creativity and listening to so many of the people we've interviewed. But there are a bunch of people who have really made that happen for us, who have contributed through the Patreon. We haven't thanked them enough. We just have not. We have not shown really how much we appreciate, even though you and I talk about these people daily.
Yeah, not publicly. Yeah, I would say that
Right.
We talk about them all the time. We talk to we talk to them literally in the Discord all the time. But yeah, it really is time to publicly just acknowledge the fact that, we have a handful of people who have really helped us get to where we are and are really at the forefront of helping fuel the future of the podcast as well.
That's right. Jen Mefasanti, Sean Malone, Kevin Menard, they've really been with us since the beginning, which is amazing. The Baby Gang has been going strong, and that has evolved over a series of months. Vintos, Baseweight is in there, who actually helped us steer the direction of what today's show is going to be a little bit. Jesse and Keaton, Andrew Stimson as well. Some of the real OGs who literally signed up like within hours of us going live on it. James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Isaac Teal, who we've mentioned before being, longtime Vsauce fan. Trev's Dead, who's on Twitter. If you're not following Trev's Dead, go and do that, because it's one of the most hilarious and underappreciated accounts on Twitter. But all these people, I just want to be clear in a way that we haven't been clear before, that all of these people and the ones who subscribe at the lower tier and are in the Discord every day and shoot us emails and DMs with feedback and questions and stuff like that, they make this show happen. It just does not happen without them.
No, especially now. And we'll get into the reasons why in a second. But one thing that's important to me at this point to talk about is just kind of the difference between the community and the feedback and the interaction between the Create Unknown listeners and, what I experience on Vsauce too. Because I think that people will probably assume that because of the size of Vsauce 2 and the amount of views that those videos get, that I must be inundated more or less with tweets and messages and fan art and stuff like that. But that's just not the case. It's really not. For some reason, I just think that podcasting and making YouTube videos creates a different dynamic between the creator and the audience. Maybe it's just educational YouTube videos and people like Nikki Jakey or Casey Neistat have like a really different relationship with their audience. But on the podcasting side, for me, we were talking in the live stream that we did just recently how there's been more Create Unknown fan art in the last year than there has been Vsauce 2 fan art in 9 years. And it's at a completely different scale, but it's just a completely different, more intimate and closer and stronger relationship with the fans of the show and us.
That created in the Unknown channel in the Discord, where people are putting up their art, their videos. It's amazing. I mean, the amount of stuff we see that other people do, whether it's fan art or not. I mean, most of the time it's their creative stuff. It's awesome. And I mentioned Baseweight. We played one of his songs a while back in the fall. We did. And every once in a while, he gets finished with a project like that and pops it in on the Discord, pops the MP3 or something. And it's kind of an event when he drops a new thing. Like, I really look forward to it. When he pops one of those tracks in, I stop what I'm doing immediately and I listen to that. And I feel that way with so many of the people who pop in and show us what they do. Andre, he's APM in the Discord, and you can see him on Twitter as well. He's got live streams where he draws things, and I love the animation streams that he does. We don't see that stuff very much with Vsauce 2, just like you said, and it is so cool to see what everybody's been doing and follow along with their progress on everything. And so that mix of the actual support, of just the creative support, it's incredible what everybody has built in the last year or so.
Well, and it goes both ways as well, because, we send out, for the Baby Gang in particular, we send out, the little plastic baby and the birth certificate and all that. But Jeff Davis from the Baby Gang sent me recently a book of riddles and paradoxes that I've been going through for Vsauce 2 videos and liked it so much that I then in turn bought another copy to send to you that you just got today. So kind of like the reciprocity of all of this has been also really fun and amazing.
It's a great book too. I only flipped through it because I didn't tell you this, but it was on the porch, not for very long, a couple hours, but it's a substantial book. I mean, this thing is a tome. It goes beyond being a book into a tome, right? But it was so cold that I was holding it for like 2 minutes. The cover was like freezing my fingers. So I put it next to the computer to warm up. So I've only flipped through the pages just briefly, and I'll actually start reading it when it warms up. But that's the process that's so cool that, yeah, Jeff looks at this book and thinks, oh, this is cool. It reminds me of the stuff that Kevin does. Kevin should have this book. Sends you the book. You think it's amazing. We start talking about the things in it. There are definitely a couple ideas to pursue in there that are probably going to, at the very least, show up in Vsauce 2 videos, if not be a video. And it's so good that you send me another copy of the book, and we just have this weird, awesome feedback loop that did not exist a couple years ago. This just was not a part of the process. And now people are, giving their feedback and thoughts and ideas on everything. And it's just a lot more engaging and more interesting than it used to be.
Yeah, so part of phase 4 of the podcast, which we'll be calling this now, will be to bolster and to further boost that level of engagement with all of our listeners and all of our Patreon subscribers and non-Patreon subscribers. But the production changes that we should get into right now really come down to Dave, who was the producer of the Create Unknown, got a promotion at work. He got a big offer to get a great promotion, and he took it. So as a result, he's no longer working on the Create Unknown, and you and I are now we're independents. We're on our own. We're in this together, Matt. It's just us. But it won't be just. True. It's really not just us. We're starting to expand the team, including Marcus, who's doing the editing for the episodes now. Ben W is going to be taking on more responsibility, but we really are phasing into this more homegrown phase of TCU.
Yeah, and you mentioned both Ben and Zelgaloo on Twitter and in the Discord. You'll probably recognize that name if you're working around the community here. But Ben and Zelgaloo have stepped up tremendously to help us fill the gaps on this stuff. As you said, if it hits a point where there just isn't time, it's not feasible to keep working on a project, that's okay. And there's still stuff to do, even if somebody has to pull back. And both Ben and Zelgaloo have stepped up to help us with those things, and they're both extremely easy to work with. They do what they say they're going to do, right? Which automatically vaults you into the top 5% of like professional life. But it's really exciting to have a couple people jump in and really step up who you're excited to build this thing with and work with. And so when that process started to play out with kind of the team changes and building this stuff up, we had to make a couple decisions about the direction of the podcast. Yes?
Yeah. And I just want to be clear that we are getting a little bit into the weeds on like background elements of this podcast. But to me, it's really important to share that, because no matter what project you yourself are working on or thinking of working on, these are the nuts and bolts of this stuff. And I feel like way too often creators don't really get into the nuts and bolts of how they make videos. Like, for instance, I was watching a video about from The Right Opinion just recently and noticed how many different editors The Right Opinion uses for one video, because The Right Opinion will make a 55-minute video, and if you'll notice, at the start of each segment of that 55-minute video, he will credit who edited that section. So, I mean, we'll talk to him hopefully in the future about that process, but that's just like one little grain of what goes on to create some of this stuff.
Managing the process the way he does is really kind of fascinating, because like you said, he has a bunch of people working on, let's say, 7 or 8 minute portions of one video, and then tying that together in a very streamlined, coherent way. It's a very different process to manage than virtually any other YouTuber uses, right? But how else do you get about an hour of extremely well-edited, fluid content on YouTube? Highly research-based, too. I mean, with the topics that he covers, you can't get them wrong, because they're usually about people's lives and current events and things like that. You can't misstate anything where it's going to be a problem. So nailing it with that degree of precision and doing it with the frequency that he uploads, like that's a really neat thing for anybody who's into a creative process. But what you said about being transparent with this stuff, it is in the weeds a bit, but at the same time, we want to expose that process, because that's kind of what we're about, is talking about how to make this stuff happen. We've done how many episodes? 34? I forget what the Gus Johnson episode was. I think about 34. This will be maybe 35. We've put about 50 hours of content out. And that was a lead up to us hitting a point where we wanted to make things sustainable, right? And we've talked in the past about how you have to kind of grind and do something for a long time to work out the kinks in it, to establish all sorts of knowledge about how to proceed before it's a real thing. For me, it was writing a ton of articles before you get paid for them, before you figure out how to write things that you'll get paid for, what ancillary things like editing you could get paid for. For you, it was making a load of videos before Mr. Michael Stevens knocked on your door, right?
Knocked on my email.
Knocked on your yeah.
Knocked on my email.
It was awesome when he pulled up his phone to find the original email, the original Kevin Outreach email. But that's kind of where we're at now, where we've done that huge bulk of episodes, that collection of interviews and us talking and getting that direction, so that we're really kind of finally ready to take that next step with the community. And so this is how all projects really work. So even though we do hit some details and will over the next probably 45 minutes, they're totally generalizable to whatever you're doing, whatever you're working on. And I've done this so many times in the past, but to me, it's even perfectly relevant to how all sorts of relationships are conducted, whether it's friendship, dating, anything like that. This is really how projects work, and it tends to be how people work, where you've got this intro period and figure out how it's going to go, and then you hit a point where you put it together.
Well, and it's always an ongoing journey of trying things and adjusting. So one of the things that we're adjusting moving forward is the elimination of on-camera video as part of the podcast. The podcast from here on of phase 4 is audio. We will still upload to YouTube, and we will still continue to use the animation that you see currently if you're watching on YouTube, or that you may have seen in the past as like a visualizer. But I loved doing the TV wall. That was really cool. I loved building that. I loved designing that and building the set. But ultimately, it came down to just, like you said, being an unsustainable way of keeping the podcast going, just because the level of moving parts that were involved, like for instance, it's hard pinning down these YouTubers. They're all extremely busy. So, and their schedules, not only are they extremely busy, their schedules are in constant flux and change like moment to moment, literally.
They're crazy. And if the Create Unknown was only about like people doing YouTube and art from, Atlanta, Georgia or something, then everybody's in the same place. Everybody's in the same time zone. But that is not the case with the people who we've talked to. They're all over the place, and they've got the strangest schedules. We both know that things pop up all day long for us, whether it's on your phone, in your email, a message. There's just stuff to deal with literally hourly that you did not expect to be there. And it's like that for all of them, too. So it's really hard to schedule. And then also, we're not always in the same place.
No,
we have events to go to and things to do, and sometimes it's both of us, and sometimes it's one of us. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
And the point is adding this TV wall where all of a sudden the video cuts out because the HDMI converter isn't working properly. That goes to the wall monitor, which then connects to the analog that goes. It's just there were like 15 critical things that needed to go right in that setup. And if one of them was going wrong, and we have, Casey Neistat or Gus Johnson or whomever taking a slice of or donating a slice of their time to speak with us, it makes me personally just feel bad and feel like I don't want in any way to inconvenience any of these people. And by having this really elaborate kind of setup for this video, it just caused a lot of issues that ultimately I think that at least I learned were kind of unnecessary as part of this process.
Right, and there were production elements too, very practical things. So when the video is in there, for the guest, all of a sudden you're putting a burden on them because they want to appear in a certain way on video because it's video. They got to get ready for it. What's in their backdrop? Oh, that's a thing. If it's audio, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. You just pop in your mic and you're good to go. And most everybody has that set up altogether anyway, so they're really just pushing a button. So it's much easier for the guests to have audio only. Also, on the editing side, we talked about this a lot over the last few months, where it's just a completely different thing to edit video as opposed to audio in terms of turnaround. It's more time consuming. There are a lot more factors there. With audio, and Zelgaloo is amazing at this, at zipping through an episode and turning it around fast. That kind of thing just isn't possible with video. And that way we're not taking a long time to push out an episode. So, for example, with Gus, that was out, 2 days after we talked to him?
Yeah, 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. And that was only because we had a weekend and a holiday and whatever,
right.
And we were busy, so really quick. With video, well, you have probably a longer time period, unless you've got a dedicated editor doing this. That is not the case. We don't have a stable of employees doing this as a full-time gig. No. So that creates a problem in the content because you can't talk about anything too timely. Right? You can't reference anything that's just happened because it might be a little while until that is actually aired. And so you have to have slightly more surface level discussions with somebody where it's a safe topic to talk about in the sense that it won't be irrelevant by the time the episode drops, or it won't be different. And that's not... We wanted to get away from that. We wanted to be able to talk to somebody the way we would talk to them if we ran into them. And then have that out and have everybody have access to that conversation in a timely fashion. And so sticking with audio like this just makes it all more streamlined on arranging things, actually doing the episode, whether it's an interview or just us like this. Which, by the way, it's easier on our end, too.
I was just going to say that. I was we were way more flexible to talk about that New Guy comic. That would have been kind of old news because this memes and that kind of trending stuff moves so quickly that even waiting 5 days on that, it's it feels like 2 years on the internet.
that is an internet eternity.
Oh gosh. But even just doing audio on that topic was a perfect example of, I think that thing popped on a Wednesday, was trending Thursday, and by Friday we were already doing the episode, and we were able to discuss kind of the phenomenon behind it that quickly. So that's really kind of the major change. It's just going to allow us to be a lot more flexible, a lot more timely, and a lot just kind of able to work with creators in a way that's less of a hassle, quite honestly, for them in any way whatsoever. It's just no longer hey, make sure your lighting is good and you showered and there's not something weird in the background.
I just want to point out that you're saying that you basically just said everybody we've interviewed, it is a hassle in their life to bathe.
That's
bathe.
The implication. Hey,
that's the implication there.
When you work from home, bathing is totally up to your own discretion. We've
got to completely transform our process because YouTubers don't bathe. That's what you just said.
That's the theme of this episode.
But I want to back up really quick here before we go into some of the other changes. Baseweight asked about this in the Baby Gang chat in the Discord, because I was talking about what we were going to talk about today, and he wanted to know what the highlights were for the first few phases. And that's pretty interesting because we've had a couple distinct ones.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, well, I mentioned how much I enjoyed building the TV wall, and I did. That was a highlight for me, just being able to figure that out. I like trying to figure out ridiculous ideas. I don't know, just the challenge of that is interesting to me, to say, hey, how can I figure out how to get a Skype call on a whole bunch of old monitors? And that was such a process. I think I spent probably 6 weeks working on that. So that was really exciting to me. And I also will say, I had no problem tearing it down either. As excited as, and I think that there is a lesson here for people to not get too overly attached to their idea babies because it's okay to spend a lot of time on something and move on from it. You know, who are the monks that do those mandala?
Oh, with the sand grains?
Yeah, the sand paintings. I saw one in college once where they did one of these paintings and it takes them all day. It's incredibly intricate. They literally create this sand painting with colored grains of sand by moving like a grain at a time or something to build this thing. It's absolutely beautiful. And then when it's done, they just destroy it. They just wipe it away. They just say, all right, that was that beautiful moment in time. And the lesson there is that, you know, not to get overly attached and overly nostalgic. And like, it's okay to be nostalgic about things. I'm nostalgic about plenty of things. It's not a lesson in just being like a cold-hearted person. But at the same time, it's like, you know, don't get so far up your own butt with your own accomplishments that you can't move forward.
You've got to be able to pull the plug on something and evolve into something else. You know, I know we talked about that in one of the very first episodes, just way, way back. I forget who we were talking to now, but that's really important to do. You know, we talked about you having done it with Vsauce too, that at a certain point, you know, you had to make a pivot on the sort of content that you were doing, and it's been awesome. If you had insisted on continuing to do the same thing, things don't go so well. They just wouldn't. And I see way too much of that on YouTube where somebody has one style and they stick to it because that's what they like and that's what they want to do. And that's it. To be honest, if iDubbbz hadn't evolved, he's a great example of this, where he's gone through stages of things like content cop and unboxing and then a long-form documentary style. I mean, nobody had a problem with his content. It's not like he was, knocking on death's door for his channel. It's not that. I think he got out in front of anything getting stale. And to be honest, I mean, he probably could continue doing the same thing forever and everybody would laugh at it. So maybe he's an exception. But it's a really good example of just not being so married to one concept that it shuts everything else out. And because he branched out that way, we got a whole lot of different formats to really, really enjoy. You know?
Yeah.
So,
and I can think of a lot of YouTubers that I'm not going to name names, like people can see it themselves, but there are glaring examples of YouTubers who have unfortunately done exactly what you're referencing, which is just cranking out the same exact thing, and when the audience leaves, they can't figure out what went wrong.
And that's when people will really know that the creator unknown is dead and it's the last episode. It'll be the throwing under the bus episode where we just rip on people and name names and all the things that we've censored until then. That's when you'll know it's over. Yeah. For me, the highlights actually started before the show. I really liked the process of building the idea and organizing the idea before we recorded at all. You know, I was totally thrilled with all of that. I like the setup and planning of things a lot. So that's just a cool process. It's why I like doing pivots and, a reborn kind of thing and whatever, because that's just an exciting thing to me. I enjoy it. The second thing is a very general highlight. It is that community interaction stuff that we talked about. I was talking to Boromir in the Discord and on Twitter as well this morning about that, about how amazing it is to get to know so many people and know what they're doing with their jobs and stuff and any projects they're working on, and why this thing is different for Andre in Brazil than it is for Marco in Puerto Rico, or it is for Boromir in Germany. It's fascinating and it's amazing. And the specific highlight of that really hit in November when I was in Australia, because I met up with James. I happened to be in the city where James from the Baby Gang lives, and I'd just gotten in. I had a weird packed schedule for my time in that city. I had like 4 days, and so the only option was and for him as well, because he works like 93 hours a week minimum, was to meet up that first night. So I had like a 20-hour trip, and then immediately went straight to go hang out with him. But yeah, and we have a beer or 17 and talk about Create Unknown stuff and YouTube stuff, and it was incredible that a couple months before I didn't know who this guy was, and now I'm in Australia and we're hanging out, and it's completely like normal, as if we always do this. And that in-person thing was awesome. That was just a big leap from, the usual interactions. And that was a huge highlight to be able to do that. And I'm excited to do that everywhere else. When I go somewhere now, I'm thinking like, who's going to be there? Who can I meet up with? What's VidCon going to be like? Who's going to VidCon?
What is VidCon going to be like? That's something that we should start figuring out for sure, because I know that there's some in the Patreon that are in the LA area.
Right. Yeah, and there are people in the Discord too who have talked about VidCon. Dojangles in Discord and Twitter was just talking the other night about who is going to go. We've talked about seeing Isaac at VidCon a bunch of times. James is also thinking of making the trip from Australia. Wow. But a lot of people are talking about, are we going to be there? Or who's going to VidCon? Let's meet up, do a thing, whatever. I'm really excited for that. Like, I want to see all of these people, and I want to see the people we've interviewed. I'm excited for that in a way that I wasn't with VidCons before this last one. Mm-hmm. Now there's like a follow-up purpose to talk to these people in person in a way that just did not exist 4 years ago for me.
Oh, well, for me either, man. Like, I hung out with Gus Johnson, for example, at VidCon last year, but it's with a huge group of people, and we spoke for, intermittently for a few minutes, and that was pretty much the extent of the interaction. Well, just recently, we just talked for like an hour and a half on the podcast, and sometimes when it comes to creative people, and sometimes you just need to make an excuse to just sit down and have a conversation with someone. Because everybody is so busy and we're getting pulled in so many different directions. And even just with us, quite honestly, doing this podcast gives you and I an excuse almost to not look at our email for an hour and a half, because we're busy and we're just going to talk to each other and not be distracted by all of the noise that's surrounding all of us. Real quick, I want to hop into the T-shirts, because we have had 2 T-shirt designs. Okay, listeners of the Create Unknown, we have had 2 beautiful, like amazing, professionally illustrated T-shirt designs finished for a really long time. And one of which is by Oska, Oska, who is an incredible illustrator. You can check out Oska on Instagram. Another one is from Lord Bung, who is a YouTuber and an animator, and has an incredibly popular animated series called Confinement that I've actually guest starred on 2 episodes of as like the Pillow King. But so we have these 2 shirts now that, we are fully independent, and Matt, you and I are just going to make decisions between ourselves and enact things that we want to see happen. Those things are going to happen.
They're happening. And I will say, go over to the Patreon. It's patreon.com/thecreateunknown. You can follow there. You don't have to subscribe or anything. Patreon is a hub of content for a community, right? And there are a bunch of people that follow without subscribing. But you'll be able to see the designs drop. You'll get you'll get the information posted there and notified about it if you'd like, with no obligation for anything. And so that was one of the first things we thought of when we decided, hey, it's time for the shirts. We have worked out every detail. We've got a community that's ready for it. We're finally able to do this. And we thought, yeah, we can announce that stuff on the Patreon, show the designs as we're getting ready for it. You know, it's going to take a little bit to set up the actual ordering and things like that. And with one of the Patreon tiers, they're getting shirts, aren't they?
I was just going to say, we're also excited to announce that the Baby Gang's going to get free shirts. We're not going to do both designs at the same time. We'll do one, and then we'll roll out probably the next one after that. But if you're in the Baby Gang, you're getting a shirt.
And we have several changes and updates to the Patreon community that we want to talk about. The first one is that we have a new tier at the $2 level for the $2 Tots. You want to talk about the Tots, Kevin?
Well, yeah, the thing is that, we had a lot of people who did reach out and say, look, I want to support the show, but I would love if you added a tier that was lower than what you currently offer. And we're doing that. We are switching around a bunch of stuff with the Patreon to allow more people into the Create Unknown. So we added the $2 Tots tier. And if you'd like to be a $2 tot, here's what that comes along with. You'll get live stream access, including the archives. So, Matt and I have been doing live streams. If you weren't aware of that, if you're in the $2 Tots, you will know right away when we're doing that. $2 Tots will have their names in the credits. You get a Discord role, and also we will be doing a bit of a lottery with the Tots, where one random winner will get a YouTube prop in the mail. So we will send you a video used prop if you win, and you are one of our beloved new Tots.
And we'll do that monthly too. So every month a tot is going to get a surprise. So it's a neat little lottery for people in that $2 tier. But I want to back up one massive, giant step and say the reason we're doing this is because we want to pay our guys really well.
Yeah.
We want to pay them what they deserve. So Kevin, can we be very transparent about finally letting people know the untold riches that we've made from the Create Unknown? I know the suspense on it is like the Trump tax returns being released, but I think we finally need to come clean with the sheer mountains of swimming pools full of Scrooge McDuck gold doubloons that we've made from this venture.
Sure. Well, since you're talking about like a money pool, I'll liken it to this pool next to my home that was abandoned for about 70 years and recently was just filled in, including with the garbage that like vagrants had thrown in the pool over the years. That's the analogy that I'll use for how much money we've made off this podcast. And look, this is totally in the spirit of transparency and not in the spirit of whining about that in any way whatsoever, because that was never part of the goal. Nobody, when we decided to create the Create Unknown, it wasn't like us rubbing our hands together talking about how we're going to retire off the back of this podcast. It was literally about, okay, how can we afford to pay the fees for the different services that require like a monthly fee to release the podcast and to host the thing and to, deal with just an editor and what they cost and paying them fairly. And a lot of that through the last year fell upon Dave as our producer, who is also our partner. And we were just working on it at the same level of just kind of doing what needed to be done without necessarily, stuffing anything in our own pockets. But now that we are, you and I are doing this, and we actually need to hire people, it turns out they would like to get paid.
Yeah, and I suppose they deserve it as well. And we just want to be able to cover all those costs fine and pay people what they deserve to be paid, and just have a sustainable thing. And we've totally recognized that it just from when you start on that revenue kind of stuff from day one, like if you try to make money from day one, it's probably going to go badly. That's just not how it works, right? You put in all sorts of time and you take losses usually to get something to a good place, and then you focus on how to make it sustainable. And then over time, well, maybe you start making a buck, and that's really cool. But that's generally not, that's the way it's got to work to succeed. And that's the way we approach all sorts of projects. We did not start this thinking we're going to make tremendous amounts of money. I have made $0 from the Create Unknown over a couple years. $0.
Yeah. Yeah, I have made negative lots of dollars. And
we do treat it.
That's okay.
As
that's okay.
Job.
I will continue to be okay
fine
with that. However, I'm not okay with not paying Marcus and not paying Ben, not being able to keep. And the
we do
lights
pay
on.
them.
Yes,
we do pay them. We want to pay them. We want to pay them more because these are guys who go above and beyond all the time. If we ask for X to get done because we need it, they end up doing X and Y, and it's amazing. That's just the type of guys that they are, where I was saying earlier, they do what they say and then some. You just want to be able to say, well, thank you for that. Here is money for your Pokemon cards and your Nintendo Wii machines and
your Easy
switcheroos.
Mac, I think it's more about like buying Kraft macaroni and cheese. But yeah, that is the point, is that 100% of your support on Patreon goes to the editing and the production and the distribution of this podcast.
Yeah.
And
back to the community.
And back to the community. Yeah, because we're also like sending you guys stuff as part of this, and also giving you other opportunities like the Minecraft server to interact with each other, and just kind of facilitating different ways to have fun and to engage with us and to engage with each other.
We've loved the way the community has built up and played out, and we just want to facilitate that and do more of that. And so we did want to readjust the Patreon tiers and the benefits. So we talked about the $2 Tots. The $5 tier we're changing the name on that, aren't we? To something a bit more meaningful.
Yeah, before it was kind of dry. It was kind of clinical. It was just called Enter, and it was essentially like you're entering the Create Unknown, and you would get... Oh, we should also mention that we used to do this whole extra Patreon bonus thing.
Yes.
And we are switching that to early access. So now the $5 tier is really where you start gaining kind of access into the show. You start being really like, you get early access to the episodes. We're going to periodically send you snail mail packages of whatever weird stuff we want, whether it's Eagle brand sardine patches or just TCU stickers. It could be a button of Steven Seagal eating a carrot. That is up to our discretion.
Yeah, we've had a mix of everything from Create Unknown merchandise to, I got that good deal in the Ukrainian flea market down by the train tracks, where I bought a whole bunch of buttons from Soviet Russian military uniforms from the 50s and 60s. And so I bagged up the buttons and sent them to everybody.
Which sounds like a fake story. But it's amazing.
No, it's absolutely
that's not a fake story. That's a real story.
No, I have the pictures to prove it. I mean, I sent them in the Discord as soon as it happened. I was like, "Hey guys, I just bought some things from a hobo down at the train tracks in Ukraine, and I'm going to send them to you."
So if you are interested in that sort of relationship with us, you have to join the Dumpster Crew. The Dumpster Crew is the new name for the $5 tier, because that name has a very real and meaningful connotation to the two of us. The dumpster crew was what we used to call our friend group back in the day, when before we did any of this creative stuff and we were just kind of figuring out what in the world we were going to do. We were just the dumpster crew.
I forget who shot that name out, but somebody just came up with it one night when we were all out. And it was this loose collection of people, probably like 8 people, who were frequently kind of out and hanging out together. And the way it seemed to work is that you were real friends with a couple of people, like maybe 2 of the others, but just acquaintances, like friendly acquaintances with the other people in the crew. And then you slowly got to know them, and you became friends with them. And that was just kind of the fluid way that the dumpster crew worked. But we didn't talk before the dumpster crew. We knew who each other was, but we weren't friends. We didn't actually know each other until we got in the dumpster crew.
Yeah, it's 100% accurate. It's like how Matt and I first became friends was through the dumpster crew. And so we thought, like, what better name than the dumpster crew to start getting regular listeners who don't know each other and don't know us outside of just listening to us, to start getting to know each other and to be a part of this thing.
We were talking about the process of the way the community has kind of gotten to know each other and built and all of that stuff, and realized, hey, this is exactly what was happening with the dumpster crew 15 years ago. This is just our new dumpster crew. Like the people who we're talking to every day on Discord, we were talking to them, on like AOL Instant Messenger back in the day, in virtually the same way, and hanging out with them and supporting them in their projects. And, they would help out with ours here and there, and just sometimes just being somebody to, forget about things with and hang out for a couple hours and have a good time. And all of it was just indispensable to our development, really. And so we thought everything is the same here. We just have a new form of the dumpster crew and a new collection of people, but it works the same way. And we just realized that we have a new dumpster crew.
Yeah. So I'm smiling so much because it was such a great time, I think, in our lives. And I love the idea of just kind of like bringing back the dumpster crew, with the Create Unknown. So that's the new $5 tier. And like I said, mystery snail mail packages from us periodically at that tier, early access to all episodes. You can submit questions and give your input on the episodes. I mean, you're in the dumpster crew. You are part of our inner workings, and you get all the lower tier rewards there as well. Discord role, name and credits, and that sort of thing. We also changed the name of the $15 tier and kind of upped the ante in terms of what it really means to be at that tier. That next tier, you become... So at that tier, you become an associate producer. And what does that mean? Wow, what big deal. A title. No. Not just a title. You are going to get an associate producer business card, personalized just for you, to prove to the world and to your parents, Mom, Dad, I am an associate producer of the Create Unknown because I joined the INFANTry. That's the name of that tier. The INFANTry. Did Isaac come up with that name, by the way?
Yeah,
INFANTry?
Isaac did, which was genius. It was amazing. And it wasn't the result of like 7 hours of asking about what a cool name would be. No, it was like 7 seconds. I posted a thing like, oh, what would be a cool thing, cool way to call this? And Isaac says INFANTry, and I'm like, boom, closed, done. Like, this is over. Yeah. Yep, we nailed it. But yeah, I mean, we're sincere about that. We want you involved in steering the direction of this show. And I'll tell you what, I will vouch for anybody on this, no matter what. I mean, you can claim the associate production credit on anything you want. And if that needs to be verified, I'll back you up. Whether it's a phone call, an email, I don't care. I will absolutely do this. And I really mean that.
We will call your boss. We will call your parole officer. We will call we will call everyone to verify that you are an associate producer. Along with the business card, you'll also gain access to the Baby Gang Discord channel, which is an exclusive Discord channel for only the Infantry members and the Baby Gang. And as I said on the live stream that we just recently did, what happens in the Baby Gang Discord stays in the Baby Gang Discord. It's a lot like it's like the Las Vegas of the Create Unknown.
Yes, but it's a really cool little spot with a limited number of people who you can go deeper on a lot of topics, have deeper discussions on things, because again, there aren't 10,000 people shooting messages back and forth. Not that there are 10,000 in our general chat, but everybody's talking about 7 different topics of discussion. Whereas in the Baby Gang, we'll talk about something with the show and everybody's talking about that thing. There aren't multiple discussions over top of one another. We'll talk about what to ask a guest, or somebody will ask some kind of detailed question about a topic, or go into something about whatever they're working on, their lives, whatever. And when that's happening, everybody in that chat is talking about that thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one topic has the floor at one time, and that's just a really nice setup if you value those kinds of chats and discussions. And we've gotten to know everybody who is in the Baby Gang, and I mentioned that earlier, how just that level of connection is awesome. It's really just a different part of my day that I wish I'd had it so much earlier, so many years ago, to have that kind of thing. And I'm very grateful to have it now and to get to know everybody in there. And I want to get to know more people. So the Infantry is a great way to jump into that.
Yeah, and also included in the Infantry, I will do a hand-drawn cartoon for you. This is something that I've done for all of the Baby Gang and creator tiers in the past. They are at your disposal. They haven't been sent out yet, but I drew them recently. I sent them to Matt, and then he'll be distributing them when the time is right.
Yeah, pretty much this week. That stuff is ready to go out in the next wave of Baby Gang packages, which is cool. There is an additional element to the current Baby Gang, isn't there? We've thrown in a little bit about the shirts.
Yeah, we already touched a little bit about the shirts, but the main thing is, like, you and I have been wanting to do these shirts for so long. We've had these designs, and to really just reward at this point the Baby Gang members who we have gotten to know and have been integral in supporting the show. They got first dibs. They're getting the shirts. We're sending them to them, for free.
That's right. As soon as I get that shirt, they get it. It'll go out. It'll go out that next day, and it'll just be part of being in the Baby Gang. That's just what you get when we have a shirt. You'll get one. Boom. You don't have to order it or do anything like that. That is part of the uniform of being in the Baby Gang. But these ideas came from, in kind of roundabout ways, they came from discussions with everybody. This is a shirt that it was almost like crowdsourced in theory, which is really cool. Just the way the community has functioned led to these types of designs. And so we're excited to go forth on that. And we talked in the past, we did, a full episode on it about all the things that go into the quality on the actual garment and the prints and this and that. And we got to a place where we can make just the absolute best product that we can which I'm so thrilled with it. And the samples that I got to make sure that you could wear this thing like 50 times and absolutely love it, that it would be your go-to t-shirt. I'm comfortable with the choices that we made on that because I've worn the stuff a bunch and feel great about it. But that's, it's finally come together where we've got the people, we've got the designs, we've got the knowledge on that. And we're excited to do all of that for a very reasonable price instead of the, $97 for a tank top that is not uncommon elsewhere. But also giving that straight up to Baby Gang members. We're pumped about that.
Yeah, they absolutely deserve it. And overall, this is just about adding things. Like we're adding a whole bunch of stuff here in order to give back to you, in order to make sure that we can give back to the people who are now newly helping us, make sure this podcast continues in the way that, we love to do it. So that's kind of the overall thing. Real quick, I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time, though. This is so random, and I didn't tell you that I was going to hit you with this, but I just wanted to ask you something totally off topic, and you're just going to have to deal with that. Okay? Listen. Paula and I have been watching a lot of The Price is Right as like a routine sort of at night. It's fun. You get to see different people. We just both like that show. There are a lot of episodes on YouTube for some reason.
Who hosts it now, by the way?
Drew Carey has hosted it for years.
Oh, it's still Drew Carey.
Sure, yeah. But
okay.
But last night we came across an episode from 1988 with Bob Barker. That was it was like a master tape. It wasn't like ripped off TV. It was like a really high quality. It was like somebody that worked at The Price is Right like stole a master tape and uploaded it to YouTube. I don't know. It's really weird. But here's my question. Everybody in the audience was dressed really nicely in 1988. Like they looked really well put together. Like their hair was all done and they're wearing like just nice outfits and dresses and jewelry, and everybody was like really just well put together. They all and granted, it's the 80s fashion, so it looks like funky by today's standards. But the point remains, like they looked nice, okay? Today, people look like a mess on that show. Like they have, homemade sloppy t-shirts that look like garbage, and that's charming, and that I think is part of the fun. But there's this weird thing now where, and I've heard a similar thing, my parents used to have talked about how at the airport, like when they were younger, everybody would dress up to go to the airport. Like if you were flying, you would, like if you were a man, you would put on a suit. If you were a woman, you would put on like a nice dress or a nice outfit or whatever. You would literally get dressed up to go to the airport. Now, people are like almost literally as literally dressed down as they possibly can get. Everybody's just kind of like wearing pajamas. So my question is, what happened? And is it better that we have like the freedom to not care and to look however we want to look? Or was there something with the social norms of the past where you were kind of expected to present yourself a little nicer? Was there something about that was better?
I think they all became YouTubers and now they don't bathe. I think we actually figured this out at the beginning.
Yeah, everybody works from home in their pajamas and they don't get dressed to go outside. It was just this weird thing that I couldn't help thinking, like, it has changed dramatically, like the social norms and expectations of how you present yourself kind of in society in our generation in like not that many years.
It actually, there is a YouTube relevant parallel on this because that at VidCon, I wear decent clothes like jacket and tie and things like that.
Yeah.
And you remember we were talking about this, like looking around at one of the events that probably had 500 people at it. And there are a lot of highly professional people there, who are running media companies and marketing companies. I'm not talking YouTube creators. I'm talking like the business side of things. And they're all super casual for the most part. And I looked around, I'm like, and somebody said to me, like, this is the first tie I've seen at VidCon.
Right.
Like, oh God, I'm 900 years old. I'm just preparing for this event like it's 1957, and standing out in a bizarre way. But it's that same kind of thing, where things have changed a little bit. Even 10 years ago, it was quite a bit different.
Yeah, and I'm just torn, and that's why I wanted to kind of throw it to you and get your thoughts on it, because I'm a bit torn on what I like better, because in many ways, like the nicer, dressed up aesthetic, I think is nicer. Like, it's nicer to see people presenting themselves as nicely as possible. On the other hand, you have just kind of like the freedom and creativity, I guess, element of being able to come as you are, as they say, right? Like, I'm just going to dress what makes me comfortable and the way that I like to present myself without trying to conform to some sort of standardized idea of what I should look like.
I actually think that both the air travel thing and the Price is Right are both the same thing, and it's a sign of tremendous progress. So on air travel, the prices for flights have dropped precipitously over decades. It is so much cheaper to get anywhere in the world than it was 20 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. Like, New York City to London was shockingly expensive in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. Very few people could do that. And so the people who are getting tickets, plane tickets from, to cross the Atlantic, had to be by default wealthier people. They were more likely to dress well and always dress well, things like that. Well, I talk about this in the Discord a lot because I'm really into cheap international travel. And so people talk about going places, and I'm like, oh, you can get a ticket to this place from this place, and it's, however much money. And it's extremely expensive. I was looking today, New York City to Madrid and Barcelona popped for $260 nonstop round trip today.
Wow.
Virtually anybody can get that ticket. You can save up a little bit and get a ticket to go to Spain from New York. That's nuts. So that's accessible to many, many more people than it used to be. Price is Right. Who was around to go to a taping in 1988 on a Tuesday at like 1 p.m.? Who had that free time? Now a lot more people have flexible schedules and free time. A lot more people have the means to go to Studio City for a vacation. I think that's where it's filmed. It's just accessible to normal people. And so I mean, part of it is relaxed attitudes. You can walk around the airport in pajamas in a way that was less acceptable 30 years ago. But at the same time, just normal people have access to really cool stuff now, just much more easily and more cheaply because they have more money, they have more free time. The prices have gone down. The external cost, the non-monetary cost, has gone down. So I think that's awesome.
The prices have gotten more right.
Yes, that's the conclusion on it. Yeah.
Okay, so it is a sign of progress. I think so. Yeah. No, I like that because I was leaning that way for sure. I just had this weird thought at the moment last night where I'm like, this looks nice. Everybody all dressed up for the game show. I don't know, something to that. It looks odd, but it also is probably one of those things where it's just I'm not used to it anymore. And when I see something new, it's like, ooh, this is different. I kind of like new.
I will say that Maura, my lovely lady, still dresses to the nines to travel.
Yes.
And
She does.
To fly, like it's still one of those things, like you need to look glamorous to get on this plane. And that means that every time we go through security, she gets stopped because she always has heels on that are so big that they have to be scanned separately. If she goes through, like, there's taking your shoes off and stuff like that. But then there's like making sure there isn't a 5-inch blade hidden in somebody's heel, like that level of detail. So yeah, the extra screening on that sort of thing happens when you have certain fashion accessories, whether it's a belt. I actually get stopped frequently if I have a belt buckle because, that's just like this big slab of metal that has to be double checked. And I always have, if I put a belt on, it has, a sizable buckle, not just the standard kind of buckle thing. So that's a disincentive to me. To look nice, to have like TSA compliant fashion. At a certain point, you're just like, yeah, t-shirt, jeans, and sandals.
Well, that's a good point I didn't even think of in regards to the airport, is that it's a lot more annoying to get through security. I mean, than it was in the 80s, that's for sure. All right. I don't have anything else, man. I just wanted to ask you about my Price is Right thought before we wrapped up, because it just popped last night, and I was like, I really need Matt's perspective on this. But the whole point of this whole podcast is, we're really excited about the new team that we have here at the Create Unknown. We're excited about folding in more and more of you and giving you guys more and more in return. And honestly, that's all happening right on Patreon. It's happening in our Discord and
on Twitter, on YouTube comments. I mean, it truly is everywhere. Yeah. And like Kevin was just saying on this, that we want to do more on that. That's not just like a line to make it sound like we're doing cool stuff. No, when we realized that we had changes on the kind of streamlining production and the people who are helping out, the first thing we said was, this is one of those points, when you're refiguring some things, this is the point where you stop and say, what additional stuff can we do? Like, this is the point at which you add on a bunch of things. This is the point at which you pull the trigger on shirts. You fold in more people into the Patreon community. You give more incentives to jump into Discord and talk with us. Just that was the first thing, is like, this is one of those rare opportunities. It's like a rest stop where it's like, hey, now's the time to go to the bathroom, kids. You just pull the trigger on all these things. So we were super excited about adding on to everything.
Yeah. So great things are happening. And honestly, it's a relief to just be able to finally talk about it, because it has been kind of like a couple of months of not being able to talk about it. So it's awesome to share
December
all this stuff
and January,
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to share this stuff with you. We are excited about these new opportunities for your ears and for your typing fingers. So be sure to check out everything. And until then, do you have anything else, Matt, that you want to share?
Yeah, I do. We'll pop the links in the description so you can head over to the Patreon, follow there. Like I said, at least follow on, which is free. I mean, you can just follow along and get all those posts that are public posts. You'll see things like the shirt designs. We have a lot of articles in the pipeline. We have some written content that's developed that we want to release to that community first, before we put it on a website or anything like that. So yeah, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown and follow along. Again, even if you don't jump on one of the tiers, at least follow the page. And you'll get a bunch of stuff. We'll also, as always, pop the Discord link in if you want to jump in there. Kevin mentioned the Minecraft server. We've got a Minecraft channel in there if you like to play, and our server is always open and running. Ben and Puff and I think Andre was involved too, maybe, ran a pretty cool tournament back in December. We gave some cool things to the people who played in that, and I think they're gearing up to do another Minecraft event. So there are a lot of reasons to join the Discord, which is always free, by the way. Anybody can come in there and hang out and chat. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff going on, and we just want you to be a part of it.
Yeah, so go to Patreon, follow for free, hop on one of the tiers to support the show. And until then, see you, Space Cowboys.